Welcome back, students of fitness, to another episode of the Liftology podcast. Rich and Joe back with you today. And today I thought we could have a little fun critiquing a few exercises. And Joe, I think you could frame how you want to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be cool to talk about a couple of exercises that we feel collectively are fairly useless, don't ever need to be done. There are also exercises that are good, okay-ish, but there are definitely better options out there. And then lastly, some exercises that are just frequently done incorrectly and should probably be saved for more advanced lifters.
Okay, that sounds good. So, we'll timestamp them down below for anybody interested in searching one specifically. But I think we'll start with the ones that are not needed, go with the ones that are decent but with better options, and then after that we could attack the ones that are usually done wrong.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think one of mine that really grind my gears is
All right, Peter.
the dumbbell side bend.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
And it doesn't really have any applicable,
Yeah,
like, it's supposed to target the obliques allegedly, but it's in a movement pattern that the obliques are not involved in.
yeah, it's really just strengthening lateral flexion, which is kind of odd.
And not what your obliques do.
Yeah, yeah. It's particularly useless when you see people doing it with a dumbbell in each hand because now you're counterbalanced anyway. So,
Yeah, the weight in the opposite hand is
Yeah.
kind of responsible for helping in
yeah.
pulling you back up.
So I just think there are, again, such better options out there. I think any kind of a chop, a side plank, exercises that tend to focus on stability or in the transverse plane, which is
Okay.
rotation, right? So working in that
And
rotary
anti-rotation.
and anti-rotation.
So like the Pallof press would be another exercise that
Correct.
you could use for anti-rotation and with that same
Yeah,
in that same
just
transverse
not
plane.
flexion. It's actual rotation or anti-rotation.
All right.
So if I could, one that I don't like, or two that I don't like, are the hip abduction adduction machine. And I know this is
And not just to not make contact with anyone else while you're on it, just the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of those things where it's just an odd position to be in for abduction and adduction. It doesn't fit in anywhere in natural movement. And I've seen too many people try to make it better. They sit on it like backwards, or they don't sit in the seat, and
they like lift their rear end off of it and just kind of do it in a squatting type position.
Just do something else. Just get off that machine and go do something else. Like it doesn't really make sense to try to make that machine better.
Yeah, well, because I mean, it's strengthening stabilizer, right?
Correct.
And you don't really need to. I mean, you do need to strengthen stabilizers, but
Strengthen them in a stabilizing
while they're
way.
being used as stabilizers,
Yes.
not like they're used as stabilizers in a squat. You have to stabilize yourself in a squat.
In a
If
lunge.
you wanna do a little extra, the stabilization aspect of it, um, maybe a band. But if you do that, then you're gonna have to lower the weight that you're doing. You're not gonna be able to max out with the band around your
Yeah,
knees.
but I do like that. I actually like the band, like the mini band around the knees, as a good teaching tool.
Mm-hmm.
With something called like reactive neuromuscular training. So what that is essentially using the mini band to actually kind of pull you into a fault, like a valgus fault pattern.
Okay.
But you don't want a super tight resistance. It's just enough resistance to remind you to push out against the band and get that hip abduction in your squats.
Yeah, it seems like it would be counterintuitive, but it's very real, and it's applies across a variety of different exercises and ranges of motion.
And that in and of itself just shows you that, you know, your hip abductors are working in a squat because you need to have hip abduction, and we train with a stimulus to remind us to abduct the hips.
Mhm.
So squats, lunges, split squats, any one of those patterns is going to use your hip abductors and adductors to stabilize.
Yeah.
Which is what they should be used for.
Yeah. So if you're doing hip machines, just wasting time.
Yeah.
Uh, speaking of wasting time, well, not even wasting time because it kind of, but it's bad. You don't need to do it. I don't want to sound like I am advocating for it as the behind the neck pull down.
Yeah.
Right. You have people instead of just out in your chest coming behind you.
Yeah.
And it's bad because it can't reach your full range of motion that you do if you're bringing it down to your chest.
Yeah, I don't get why that was ever popularized. You're pushing your head forward in like an awkward position, and you're not getting a full lat contraction. You literally have to stop where
Yeah,
your hands are meeting.
It's literally doing less.
Yeah.
Than a regular pull down.
Yeah, and your
with increasing chances of injury.
Yeah, right. So risk goes up, reward goes down.
Why not just do a regular pull down?
Do a pull down. Yeah, it's I don't know how that even got popularized. It's just a weird variation. Yeah, just any kind of pull down or pull up or.
And plus, like, it kind of gets people used to sticking their neck forward.
Yeah, which we do enough of on our phones.
On their phones, on the computer. It's a big thing that I think with one of the exercises on the list that we have a little later, it kind of peeks its head and showing what it does.
Yeah.
So like we'll get to that a little later on, but just no good. Just stay away.
Yeah.
In our humble opinions.
Yeah. Next, the standing double cable bicep curl, which is like the ultimate like bro exercise.
The dude bro gym machine.
Yeah, that one's rough. That one's rough for a couple different reasons. One, it's just not an effective exercise. There are too many options available to you that are going to be far more effective. So if it takes you 7 minutes to complete 3 sets of that exercise, that's just 7 minutes that could have been more valuable to you by doing any other curling variation.
Well, I think everyone's kind of looking for different ways to do the same move.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're doing a bicep curl. Right? What you're doing one way or another.
This one's cool because I can stare at myself in the mirror and flex my biceps as hard as I can.
Kind of like the movie American Psycho.
Yeah.
Where you just stare at yourself while you're working out. No, and here's a funny thing. Like I'll add a little gym etiquette to it, not just the vanity aspect of it, because these big cable cross machines usually, depending on what's going on at the gym, will frequently have 2 people on it at once.
Yeah.
So you're taking up 2 spots for people to be working out.
Not only are you taking up like 2 cable machines, but like if it's one of those big cable crossover machines, you're literally grabbing one handle, walking all the way to the other side, grabbing the other, and now you're taking up 10 feet of space. Do a bicep curl. And yeah, for gym etiquette reasons, that's just, especially if it's like peak hours, that's just a terrible idea.
Yeah. There are a variety of different ways to do curls. Leave that one out of your repertoire.
And the squat rack. don't get in there and do curls either. Not a good idea.
It's funny that you should say squat rack though.
Yeah.
Because that brings me to one of my least favorite pieces of equipment in the gym.
Yeah, mine too.
The Smith machine. And you can tell it was created a while back before like more research was done, and it's hard to try to tell someone like, hey, your product that we used for so long, we found out that it's not really that great.
Yeah. I think for all intents and purposes, it was for a good cause, right?
Yeah.
They were like, oh, we could invent this machine that stabilizes the bar for you. and therefore you don't have to work as hard to do the exercise.
Well, I think it was
It's just
created
safer, quote
so that
unquote.
like when you load up on the bar, and if you favor one end a little bit more, you'll start to lean,
Yeah.
and everything just goes to hell.
Yeah.
Uh so I think the intention of that was to make sure that like, hey, the bar won't tip over one way or
Yeah.
the other,
Yeah. I guess like it's
or forward or backwards, which if you're doing a squat or a bench press or anything where you're going to have a little bit of a bar path being
yeah. I think
relatively straight but not set in stone.
the biggest culprits being like the bench press, or you see people doing like a seated overhead press. But now on a Smith machine, if you're starting with the bar here, you want to press overhead, you can't. It has to continue to just go straight up. This
Yeah.
isn't overhead. This is overhead.
Yeah.
So
That that little range of motion, because it's similar in the squat, right? Because if you get down too far, you start to push your rear end back,
yeah,
and you load up the weight on your neck, and your back is the first thing that get involved when you start to come back up.
yeah,
It's just like it was well intentioned. So like I don't want to sound like the person who invented it I'm going after or anything along those lines. It's just now it's an outdated piece of equipment.
yeah. And the for a really simple substitute to the Smith machine is just do the exercise anywhere else. Right? It's like, it's like
just don't use that
yeah,
machine.
like if you want to do a squat, go do a squat. You want to do a deadlift, go do a deadlift. You don't need the Smith machine.
And if you're worried about the stabilization, use lighter weight.
Use lighter weight. Get better at stabilizing. That's a big part of
it's not a
exercise.
race. Like if this is for general population and general health, there's no finish line in having fitness as a lifelong goal. Right? You want to make sure you're healthy, you want to make sure you're doing it right. And for the athletic population, they're most of the time going to be able to do these squats right. They don't need the Smith machine
Correct.
anyway.
And the stabilization is such a huge part of it because, for instance, weight being the same, doing a 135-pound squat on a Smith machine and a 135-pound squat free weight is very different, way more demanding on with the free weights, which is why if somebody were to say to me, hey,
With your core, and also let's go back a few minutes ago. Your hips.
yeah, hip abduction and adduction, absolutely. And if somebody said to me like, oh yeah, I do, I'd squat 225 for 10 reps. Like, wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, in the Smith machine. I'm like, no, you don't do 225. It's just it just makes it really does make it that much easier. And you could experiment yourself and give it a try. Load up what you normally squat in a Smith machine and feel how much easier it feels, because all of a sudden you're not worried about left to right movement, forward to back movement, straight bar pat down and back up.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. Not a fan. Whoever this Smith guy is, get him out of here.
I think you'll find a lot of Smiths out there, so it'll be tough to find that culprit. But with that being said, I think
actually one last thing. I did hear about an incident not too long ago. Maybe it was a while ago, but like I think it was in Mexico. I don't know, but it was online, which was gruesome. A woman was doing like a bench squat variation on the Smith machine, and somehow got her neck pinned.
Oh no!
Yeah, like she ended up like pinned between the bar and the bench with the weight on it. And it was.
You could just say an accident happened. I don't need.
Not good.
I could just picture that.
Should we pull up that video? No, I'm just kidding.
No. So anyway, we're trying to move on from that horror.
Yeah.
I think we could get into some exercises that are pretty decent exercises. If you like a few caveats to a few of them. We don't want this to sound as if we're coming after exercises. We're about preaching safety for all of people out there. That's the most important part of training. The first thing is to not hurt people. So we just want to clarify that that's the reason we're doing this.
Injuries derail your progress.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get back on track with what I was originally going to say before I put that little caveat in there. Was decent exercises with some better options.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things, yeah, it's good, but like there are definitely better options out there, is the leg press, and specifically the one where you're sitting down like on a chair and pressing, because the one where you're lying on the floor with the weight, I would chalk that one up to not needed.
Yes, I agree. That one is not needed, right? I guess you'd call it like a decline leg press where you're sitting lower than the sled and,
Mm-hmm.
and pushing the sled away from you. That one and another like variation of a leg press.
The amount of like knee snaps I've seen on the one that you're
Yeah,
lying on the floor,
I know. And
they're gruesome.
once you hyperextend with all that weight in front of you,
Yeah.
I mean on top of you rather, like you're in big trouble. Big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Again, horrifying videos on stuff like that. But another variation that I've seen, which I don't really get, I'm sure this was something that like got popularized on like social media or like in like on like a Shape magazine website or something, and I just see it being done too frequently. Is like a leg press variation where they stand up on the assisted pull-up machine and with
I
like
I
with
know what you're
one
talking
leg,
about. I
yeah,
know what
with
you're
one
talking
leg,
about.
they're like pressing down on the assist, and I'm like,
Yeah.
just go do a
I mean,
single leg,
theoretically, but like,
just go
no,
do a single leg
just
press.
do a single leg press. Yeah, you don't need
It's
to. Plus, there are people, again, etiquette wise, there are people looking to use the assisted pull up machine for assisted pull
yeah,
ups.
I just don't get it. Just go just get on the leg press, put one leg on it, and press. It's the same concept. In fact, it's probably more challenging. You're going against gravity, right? I don't know. It's weird,
Yeah, no,
but staying on legs again, decent. Just think there are better options, and I know every bodybuilder in the world would disagree, but there are better options. The leg extension.
well, I mean, bodybuilders are a different breed,
Yeah.
as we have covered in the past. You could find an episode that we did on that with performance enhancing drugs uh in one of our previous videos. But they would argue because like, they're trying, it's very different because they're trying to look a certain way.
Yes.
But for them and for the general pop, I mean not the general pop, I'm sorry, for rehab.
Yes.
It's good in a rehab sense.
I
You don't
don't
want to
even.
progressively overload
Yeah.
a leg
I don't
extension.
even love it in rehab. It's
It's fine in rehab because it's always light. But I mean,
yeah.
it's the same thing. You see people, instead of a leg extension machine, put ankle weights on.
Yeah. Or if they're doing like you said, nice lightweight, and they're doing 30 reps, 40 reps. Like I get it, right? It's for rehab purposes.
Hmm.
I understand that, but I don't like it for the general population. And again, I just feel like there are better options. Essentially, like any squat pattern, right?
Lunge,
Yeah, split
squat.
squat, lunge pattern, anything that's knee dominant, that's closed chain. Closed chain meaning your feet are in contact with the ground versus open chain where your feet are dangling.
Yeah.
So, because when your feet are dangling, the focal point, the fulcrum, is the knee itself,
Hmm.
right? And your knee is actually set like here's the edge of the bench. Your knee is actually set just past the edge of the bench. So when you
Hmm.
go to extend your legs, absorbing all that weight is your little rinky dinky knee joints. They're not really strong enough to
Yeah.
handle stuff like that. Um, so any one of those, I like we talked about it briefly offline. We talked about the um, reverse
Curl.
Nordic curl, which is like, um, rather than, so with the Nordic curl, essentially you'd be down on your knees, you'd have a bar fixed over your legs, and you'd be lowering yourself forward, right?
Hmm.
Stressing the hamstrings. The reverse Nordic curl is just leaning back. And then
Yeah.
when you go to get up into that neutral position, you just press your shins into the ground and it brings you back up to neutral, which is essentially a leg extension, but now your legs are supported on the ground. I'm sorry, it's a knee extension, but your legs are supported on the ground. So, yeah, again, just there are better options out there. Next.
Well, since we already gave sand and cable curls some love or lack thereof, I think we go with just curl machines. Like
Yeah.
it's just another way to sell a piece of equipment.
Yep.
I don't think this one needs much coverage at all, other than there are many different varieties of curls that you can do with
Yeah.
free weights.
Hey,
And
Rich,
I think should.
what would you tell me to do instead of a curl machine?
Oh, a dumbbell curl?
Oh, cool.
If
Yeah, I mean it's really just that simple,
I
right?
mean
It's like
there's rotating curls, right? Hammer curls, just
barbell
regular
curl,
barbell
dumbbell
curl,
curl,
a litany
or how about a
of curls.
cable curl, but like it's just the bar on the single cable machine and just curl.
But
Like,
I can use two,
yeah, yeah,
and everybody could see how cool I look.
yeah. It's yeah, just any curl, a concentration curl, you name it, any curl. You don't need the machine.
Yeah.
Because think about it, then everybody would need a curl machine for their home gym. I can't do curls. I don't have a curl machine. So,
Or a squat rack.
yeah. And as mentioned earlier, and we talked about it, being used for the leg press. I'm not a huge fan of the pull-up machine stuff, the assisted pull-up machine.
Oh no?
I'm not. I think a better option for learning to do pull-ups, two options. I like eccentric, lowering yourself down, right? So basically sitting up like a box where you could just grip the bar in your pull-up position, get yourself over the bar, and just slowly lower yourself down,
Okay.
right? As a starting point, working that way. Or I like better than the machine itself is using like a resistance band. I like the resistance band better because it gives you the most assistance where you need it. So on the pull-up
At
machine,
the bottom.
yeah, pull-up machine is going to be a consistent assistance. Wow, that's tough to say. Consistent assistance all the way through. With the band, as you get closer and the band has less stretch to it, you have to actually engage your lats more, but you're engaging them where you're already in a stronger position.
Okay. I can see that. I don't necessarily. Just I mean it's in this particular case I don't think I mean like this is a whole better there are better options and it's
Again,
decent. But as long as you're doing it correctly, I don't mind the pull up machine. Like
fair enough.
because I could only imagine your thought process behind it also partially I'm taking a leap. I don't know if this is how you think, but you don't want too much forward lean, and you don't want you get your shoulders involved. So
Yeah,
so if someone is doing it correctly, like squeezing their shoulder blades back, I don't see the difference. I mean, I don't see it as being necessarily bad.
yeah. I think it kind of goes in line with the Smith machine thinking too, though. Whereas when you do a real pull up from a
Mhm.
hang position, your arms are directly above you. You engage the lat, you start to pull up. There's that. It's not a straight path up, or else my head would hit right into the bar. Right. I
Okay.
actually think about pulling the bar to my chest. Right, trying to get that bar. Not just trying to get your chin up over the bar. It's actually trying to get your sternum almost to the bar, right?
Okay.
So
But you can kind of lean
yeah,
back, and that would kind of like the difference between a pull-up machine and a Smith machine
you have the
is you have
ability,
the ability to
correct?
kind of lean back to get your chest up.
Which is why it falls under the category decent, but there are still better options.
All right.
Same holds true for bench or chair dips.
Oh, I just don't like them in general.
Okay.
I mean, you could say decent with better options. I'm not a fan
Okay.
of them in general because I don't know. People do them wrong, and when there's a variety of, I mean, this is basically gonna be the exact argument you just had for the pull-up
There you
machine.
go.
But when there's a variety of different things that gets the same results, why would you put yourself? Well, I mean, I would argue in this case, doing chair dips puts you at a higher risk of actual injury rather
Okay.
than the pull-up machine
That's true.
because your
That is
shoulders
true.
are internally rotated.
Sure.
You I mean, you can do them right.
Which
I,
is which is why again, it's like decent, but like kind of think about what you're doing and what position you're in. Because my big thing is, like you said, with the people gripping the edge of the bench and they have that internally rotated shoulder position and they're doing dips.
Hmm.
A simple fix is just get your hands back behind you and rotate them out. And now all of a sudden your shoulders are back,
Hmm.
and try doing them that way. The whole purpose of the chair or bench dip is you're not strong enough to do regular dips. So you have your feet to kind of help out, right?
So like you were, if you get to a dip and
Correct.
same way you would
Yeah, we're literally just on the opposite sides of this one for two similar style
for the same
exercises.
reasons,
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah.
yeah,
Eh, no, some people like, what are you gonna do?
yeah, yeah. So, chair dips, bench dips, they're better options for targeting triceps. You can do like a close grip bench press, close grip push up,
You can do tricep extensions with the rope,
tricep extensions. Yeah, yeah,
or with a dumbbell. This.
correct. So like as like an at home option, it's okay if you're doing them correctly. But I could definitely see, like you said, even just doing it with the banded resistance, just like you would for the pull up, is probably a better option to get better at dips than starting. So, yeah.
All right, I think that's a good point to the in with better options
Yeah.
and get into the real meat and potatoes of exercises that are usually done wrong.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these exercises we're about to talk about, just as an upfront caveat, they're not all bad exercises. They are exercises that I think are jumped to too early in somebody's training career
In fact, I'd
journey.
say a few of them are good.
Yeah.
Not even just like not bad, but a few of them are good, but just done incorrectly.
Yeah. And just like too soon into a novice's training protocol, right? Like
Yeah.
they're exercises that I feel like look easy, but and for that reason, somebody who's been working out for like 2 weeks is like, oh, I can do that exercise. They're gonna attack it completely wrong, and
All right,
that's the
so I
problem.
think we should talk about those ones first,
Yeah,
right? And then the more advanced ones, or the ones that can be used for more advanced lifters.
yeah,
So, like, one of the ones that you've done wrong, which I think is a great exercise, uh, are Russian twists,
yeah.
because they put a lot of stress on your lumbar spine, doing them
A lot of
correctly.
shear forces, right, on the lumbar spine. When we talk about shear forces, if you think about your vertebrae with your discs, I mean, you're kind of shearing right against that the vertebral disc. Not really
A
good.
human corkscrew.
Yeah, not really ideal. However, I would say for somebody who understands the idea of thoracic rotation, being able to rotate thoracically with a neutral lumbar spine, it's actually a good exercise, right? It's again training in that transverse plane.
Hmm.
The thing I hate to see is kind of newbies attacking this exercise and they're sitting down, they're hunched
Usually with
over,
like a 25-pound weight,
and they're
also.
just trying to rotate and like bounce a medicine ball as far side to side as they possibly can, and it's just like that's not what that exercise is about at all.
Yeah, no, and I feel bad doing criticizing it a little bit too, because a lot of time it's just people trying to better themselves.
Yeah,
And like,
but until you're ready for something like that, again, there are just better options that are safer to perform, right? And I think a great example is like a stability chop, or even like a more dynamic chop pattern.
hmm
Um, that's something that's going to work in that transverse plane, um, and focus on more primarily on thoracic rotation versus lumbar rotation. Um, I don't know.
all right.
That's just my opinion. I just think it's one of those exercises that hold off until you understand what that rotation should feel like versus just trying to spin around as far as you can side to side.
Yeah, no, it's not
Yeah.
not a game. You're trying to
Yeah.
yeah. With that being said, though, I think sticking with core exercises that are good for you, if done correctly, and this one is less of a, I think that less of you getting an injury, more of a not getting the results you want from the exercises crunches.
Yeah.
See a lot of people swinging with their hips and just
Yeah.
like it down, right? Slow it down, do it properly, do less if you have to. The number doesn't matter. The
Yeah.
goal is fatiguing your muscles.
Yeah. I don't know why it became this thing with like crunches in particular. Like the volume just needed to be extreme, not even high. I mean, like extreme. People are like, yeah, you got to end every core day with 4 sets of 100 crunches. Like, what? You're gonna do 400 crunches? Insane. Um, Actually, for anybody out there who's interested in learning a great variation of the crunch, Stuart McGill, spine specialist,
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of invented like the McGill crunch. Um, it's it's a much safer form of a crunch, and it's actually involves more of like the hollow position, which is what we use for core stability,
Mm-hmm.
not spinal flexion. Right, so crunches are
Well, because if you want to really get into the crux of it, right? Uh, your abs are only responsible for your two of spinal flexion.
yeah
So, like, you're not going very far.
no and the
I was trying to figure out how I wanted to phrase that because, like, yeah, like you're not supposed to flex your spine that much, right?
repeatedly
Repeated, yeah,
over and over
yes.
400 times.
And where like it's not load bearing, it's still force. It's
Yeah,
still a force that's being applied to your spine.
yeah. And
And
also, when you watch some people do crunches, how far they come up where they actually stop flexing and just kind of throw their head forward, make it feel like they're going
yeah,
even further. Like, again, it's just one of those exercises that there are better options out there, you know.
forcing your neck forward isn't flexing your spine more.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely one of those exercises that I don't hate. I don't love it either. It kind of falls in that category. Like, like if you want to do a set, you know, a set or two or three of 15 reps, okay. But I don't know why it has to become this massive volume. So, for that reason,
bigger, faster, stronger, baby.
yeah, more is always better. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke.
All right. You have anything else you want to add to like non-Olympic style? Not even Olympic style, but like advanced lifters.
Yeah, I think back hyperextensions or hyperextensions. Not a big
Mm.
not a big fan of the term um hyperextension.
Well, hyperextension in your back from the get-go
Not a
is
good
not
thing.
something you want.
Yeah, it's not something to try to achieve. Um with that being said, I think the back extension machine, which is like the chair that you kind of lean forward on and then you flex at the hip and extend,
Mhm.
is good. But notice it's flex at the hip, extend at the hip.
Yeah,
Flex at the hip, extend at the hip. That's a very safe pattern. It's very reminiscent of RDLs and deadlifts. So for that reason, it's great. I think this is like an exercise that everybody should do, as long as you can do it correctly, which is stopping at neutral. Stop the movement when
yeah. You don't
you're
have to keep flying back as
yeah.
far as you can.
Once your glutes extend your hips to their max extension,
Mhm.
anything beyond that is
Which would
just
be like just standing straight up,
essentially
essentially, like
neutral. Yeah.
in whatever position you want
Yeah,
to.
I mean, you want to make the argument that you can get 10 to 15 degrees of a little extra extension.
For what? The cost of your lower back?
Yeah, just stop at neutral. I mean, and if you're doing that, I think again, great exercise. Just make sure you're doing it properly, stopping at neutral, using your glutes to come up into extension, right? Um, again, are there better options until you learn how to control that, until you can feel neutral and you're not just swinging through a range of motion? Yeah, any kind of bridge or hip thrust is probably a better way to engage the glutes. But with that being said, a good exercise to include in your program when you're experienced enough to understand when your glutes stop working for extension and your lower back kicks in to get into that hyper.
Yeah. You don't want to push those discs.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you push them hard enough, they will get stronger. Again, that's a joke. Don't do that.
Scary. Okay. And okay, so we covered some of the ones that are usually done wrong, but some of them are good for the non-advanced athlete lifter. But I think there's a few that are actually pretty good exercises, but they're usually done wrong, and they are very good if you are an advanced lifter at your advanced lifts, like at your cleans, at your jerks,
Snatches.
at your snatch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of them being the upright row, because that is, I would say, like a key part of your when not to do the row in a snatch or a jerk, right? But the ability to get your
that turnover.
Yeah. And you because your shoulders have to be
exactly
so far back.
So with upright rows, really, really good exercise that you need the proper shoulder mobility for. Because never, and I would actually include this in the list of exercises you should never do, not needed to do ever, is a close grip upright row.
Oh no, because we mentioned it earlier. Your shoulders are internally rotated.
Yeah.
You never want to do an exercise. Like I'm very big into be like, oh, never say never type stuff. But like, except for this, you never want to do an exercise with your shoulders internally rotated.
No,
that's not. We're not made to be in that position. So lifting from that position only enforces deficiencies.
And an argument could be made with particularly with like the sport of weightlifting. The snatch. When your arms are up overhead, your chest is forward, your shoulder is technically in an internally rotated position.
Yeah.
But we don't train internal rotation. That's actually when the bar's up overhead, that's a stable shoulder. Shoulder stays put, right? And you lean forward, and that's what causes internal rotation.
Yeah.
We don't train internal rotation.
Well put.
So, anyway, yes.
So, piggybacking off of the idea of that rotation, right? And you don't want to do behind the neck shoulder. I messed that transition up because you're not internally rotating when you're back here, but
you're not.
But your head is very forward.
Yeah. Now,
especially if you're doing it with like a barbell.
Yeah, and now this one is actually almost on the opposite end of the spectrum, where you need enough external rotation to be in that position safely.
Yeah. That's what I had meant to say. But
so now, and again, I think this falls into the category of a great exercise, right? Like behind the neck press is a great exercise if you're capable of getting into that position properly. So this, again, it's more advanced than it looks. It's one of those things where I think people see it and they're like, I can mirror that. I can mimic that.
Okay.
But if you're already set up for that press and you're here and you're going to do a push press or a push jerk from that position and you're already here, no good, no bueno. Right? You have to be able to have that good starting position. So it's just one of those exercises that down the line could be very beneficial. But making sure that you're there, you have that shoulder mobility, you have the strength in those positions, you feel stable. Yeah, again, just saying it's a good exercise that's jumped into way too early by a lot of lifters.
That's what most lifts.
Yeah.
uh, you have
Kind
anything else?
yeah, that I think another exercise that falls in that exact same category is shrugs. Right? Barbell shrugs, dumbbell shrugs. It's if for most people you don't need to do shrugs.
Yeah. And if you go too heavy, you're gonna get that forward lean again, right?
Yeah.
To get it up.
Yeah.
You want yeah.
And I just think it's one of those things that most people, the weekend warrior or the people who work behind the desk, we spend so much time internally rotated
Mm-hmm.
or in this kind of, elevated position that training that position even more is kind of more detrimental. Um, Bringing it back to when we were talking about pull-ups, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were saying like being able to engage your lats, right? And you said, oh, the assist machine is good because if you can engage your lats, and do it properly, great. If you're finding that at the top of any pulling position, whether it be a pull down or a pull up, your shoulders are coming up or rounding forward.
Too heavy.
It not only is it too heavy, your traps are coming in and taking over as like prime movers, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I guess it could be because it's not too heavy.
Yeah,
Like it could happen
it
in the
could be
case with
habitual,
lightweight.
right? Yeah, it could be habitual. So if that's the case, we're already struggling to get our lats stronger, and our traps already too strong.
You wouldn't want to reinforce that.
Exactly.
It doesn't do you any good.
Now, shrugs in a more advanced program are great, right? Especially again, going back to like the weightlifting style lifts, right?
It's very specific in its
that
application.
yeah, that extension into that shoulder shrug. Right, but if you can't do those lifts to begin with, you don't need to train shrugs.
I gotta imagine some of that stuff has to do with people who aren't Olympic lifters wanting to do some parts of it's just.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know when the transition or when it came from.
it's
But
fun. It is fun. It adds a new dynamic to like a workout. It takes a long time to get good at them, and I think that's one of the downsides of it becoming so mainstream is like everybody is now like in the gym like doing clean and presses and snatches, and you're like,
we talked about pull-ups. I would say I would, without getting into the details of this specific one, I can't stand kipping pull-ups.
I mean neither.
But I'll just leave it at that. We cover it some other time. But
I'm not a fan of those.
I mean that's for those CrossFitters that want to be more advanced, so they do most of the time people doing kipping pull-ups aren't ready for kipping pull-ups.
No, and again, they're doing it because they have to do a certain amount in a certain amount of time, right? It's a timed event. It's a sport, right? No offense, but it is. It's
just because you said no offense doesn't mean. Okay.
But like, if it's a race to do as many as you can, you want to do them as fast as you can.
Yeah.
So I get why they do that,
but I mean, it's just a horror show for you.
Yeah, and you're gonna get way more benefit out of learning how to do pull-ups properly and build yourself up to doing actual pull-ups, strict pull-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think with that being said, right, the whole point of the video wasn't to really just knock things down a notch or anything like that. We just want to kind of make sure people know what's safe, and that's really what we're passionate about, right? We want to work with people.
100%.
We want them to know what is safe and effective, right? We don't want to hurt anybody. We're just there to make sure you're working out with a good head on your shoulders, right? That's just with that, take what we gave you. If you want to look up your own things, or you have questions for your own things that you look up on your own, leave a comment, send us a message on our Instagram account. But you know, at the end of the day, you just gotta make sure that you're working out just as smart as you are hard. Catch you later.
Next time.